If you asked 1,000 people to name a rock song from the 1970s, you'd start hearing the same titles again and again and again. Not because they were better, but because they were everywhere. On the radio, in cars, in bars, in movies. These weren't just hits, they were unavoidable. Today, we're counting down the 10 most played songs of the 1970s, the ones radio never let go of. 10. Barracuda, Heart. We start with a song born from a moment of pure, white-hot rage. After a show, a promoter, echoing rumors already being pushed by the band's label, suggested that Ann and Nancy Wilson were in a romantic relationship for publicity. Ann Wilson went back to her hotel room that night, furious, and began writing what would become Barracuda. And what's remarkable here isn't just the anger, it's the control. Because rage usually makes people lose precision, but in this case, it sharpened everything. Now listen to the riff. Guitarist Roger Fisher was aiming for something with the weight and drive of Achilles' Last Stand by Led Zeppelin. He didn't copy it, he distilled that energy into something tighter, faster, more aggressive. That opening doesn't ease you in, it hits immediately. And maybe that's exactly why radio embraced it, because despite the anger behind it, Barracuda became impossible to ignore. A track that stations kept coming back to, again and again. The title itself wasn't subtle. Barracuda was a direct shot at the people who tried to exploit the band. This wasn't just a song, it was a message. 9. Born to be Wild, Steppenwolf. Here is where rock stops being music and becomes a declaration of identity. Mars Bonfire, the brother of the band's drummer, wrote this thinking about one thing: movement, the feeling of the road, of freedom. It started as something simple, almost personal. On the surface, it's just a song about driving, speed, open highways, post-war America finding itself again. But then something unusual happened. Because this song doesn't really belong to the 1970s, and yet it became one of the defining sounds of that decade. Born to be Wild by Steppenwolf was released in 1968, but its real life, its real impact, began when it exploded into global culture through Easy Rider. The song wasn't written for the film. Director Dennis Hopper was using it as a temporary track during editing, just something to guide the tone while he searched for alternatives. But nothing worked better, because the song didn't just fit the film, it was the film. Motorcycles cutting through the desert, no destination, no rules, just motion. And hidden inside it, something else. The phrase, "Heavy metal thunder." At the time, it was just imagery. Years later, it would help name an entire genre. And once that image connected with the music, there was no separating them anymore. That's when radio stepped in. Because suddenly, this wasn't just a song people liked. It was a song people recognized instantly. And through the 1970s, it kept coming back, on the radio, in culture, in memory. 8. Smoke on the Water, Deep Purple. On December 4th, 1971, Deep Purple arrived in Montreux, Switzerland, to record what would become Machine Head. That night, they went to see a concert by Frank Zappa and the Mothers of Invention at the Montreux Casino, the very place they planned to use as a recording studio. During the show, a fan fired a flare gun into the ceiling. The building caught fire, and within a short time, the entire casino was destroyed. Zappa calmly told the audience to evacuate. No one died, but the venue and much of the equipment was lost. Deep Purple witnessed the fire from inside the crowd and later watched the smoke spread across Lake Geneva. That image stayed with them. Days later, bassist Roger Glover recalled the phrase from a dream: "Smoke on the water, fire in the sky." That became the title. When the song was released in 1973, it reached number 4 on the Billboard Hot 100. But what made it last wasn't the chart position, it was the riff. Simple, direct, instantly recognizable. The kind of sound radio doesn't have to introduce, it just plays it. And once it did, it kept coming back, again and again, until it became one of the most played songs in classic rock radio history. 7. More Than a Feeling, Boston. This song took 5 years to finish, not because the band was lazy, because one man refused to release it until physics agreed with him. Tom Scholz was a graduate engineer from MIT. He built his own effects units, the Rockman, because nothing on the market could produce the sound he was hearing in his head. He recorded almost everything himself in the basement of his home. The band Boston was, essentially, one man's engineering project that accidentally became one of the best-selling debut albums in American history. The guitar tone on this record, that shimmering chorus effect, rewired what radio rock sounded like for an entire decade. But what this song is actually about is something no technology can manufacture: the phenomenon of musical memory. How a specific song can physically transport you back to a moment that no longer exists. Scholz built a perfect machine to capture an imperfect feeling. 6. Sweet Home Alabama, Lynyrd Skynyrd. Sweet Home Alabama was written by Ronnie Van Zant as a direct response to Neil Young, specifically his songs Southern Man and Alabama, which criticized racism in the American South. Van Zant even names Young in the lyrics. On the surface, it sounds like a feud. It wasn't. Van Zant regularly wore Neil Young t-shirts on stage. Young, years later, admitted that parts of his own lyrics were too broad, and that Skynyrd's response was fair. So what you're hearing isn't a fight, it's a conversation, set to a riff. And that riff is where everything starts. It wasn't written by Van Zant. It came from guitarist Ed King during a rehearsal. A simple, rolling figure that felt immediate. The band built the song around it. No complexity, no excess. Just something that locks in instantly. And then there's the moment at the very beginning. Turn it up. Turn it up. That wasn't meant for the audience. It was Van Zant speaking to the engineer, asking for more volume in his headphones. It was never supposed to stay in the track, but they kept it. And that detail matters, because it gives the song something rare. The feeling that you're hearing it as it happens, not polished, not distant, alive. When it was released in 1974, it reached the top 10 in the United States. But its real success came later. Radio picked it up and never really let it go. Because everything about it works instantly. The riff, the groove, the chorus. No introduction needed, no explanation required. It's the kind of song that, once it starts, people don't change the station. And that's why, over time, it became one of the most played songs of the decade. 5. Go Your Own Way, Fleetwood Mac. The strangest thing about this song is that it doesn't sound like a breakup. It sounds like control. Go Your Own Way was written by Lindsey Buckingham during the collapse of his relationship with Stevie Nicks. But instead of sounding defeated, it sounds deliberate, almost confrontational. There's one line in particular. "Packing up, shacking up is all you want to do." Nicks later said it wasn't true, that it never happened that way, but the line stayed. You can go your own way. And that changes how you hear the song. Because now it's not just emotion, it's perspective. Two people remembering the same relationship differently. And they didn't resolve that difference. They recorded it, together, in the same room. When it was released, it became the band's first top 10 hit in the United States. But that's not why it lasted. Radio didn't hold on to it because of the story. It held on to it because of the feeling. It sounds familiar, but never comfortable. And that's why it kept coming back. 4. Free Bird, Lynyrd Skynyrd. If I leave here tomorrow. Some songs become hits, others become something people carry with them. Free Bird by Lynyrd Skynyrd was released in 1973 on the band's debut album. At first, it wasn't even the biggest track on the record, but over time, it became their most requested song. And there's a reason for that. The song starts quietly, almost like a question. Ronnie Van Zant sings about freedom, about not being able to change, about leaving instead of staying. It doesn't feel like a typical rock song. It feels personal. Then, halfway through, everything changes. What follows is one of the most famous guitar endings in rock history, a long, building solo that seems to go on forever. And that's exactly what made it special. Because people didn't just listen to it, they waited for that moment. By the mid-1970s, something unusual started happening. Fans began shouting "Free Bird" at concerts, not just at Lynyrd Skynyrd shows, but everywhere. At first, it was a real request. Then it became a joke. And eventually, it became part of live music culture. Which says something important. This wasn't just a popular song. It was a shared experience. And radio understood that. Because once stations started playing it, they kept bringing it back, again and again. Not because it fit the format, but because people never got tired of hearing it. 3. Hotel California, Eagles. Welcome to the Hotel California. Some songs are hits. Others feel like a place you've been to. Hotel California by Eagles was released in 1976, and almost immediately people started asking the same question. What is this song actually about? Over the years, theories started to spread. Some said it was about a satanic church. Others believed it described an asylum. The band denied all of it. Don Henley explained it more simply. It was about the loss of innocence. Such a lovely place, such a lovely place. And the darker side of success in Los Angeles. But here's the interesting part. The mystery never hurt the song. It helped it. Because every new listener tries to figure it out, and that keeps it alive. Then there's the ending. That guitar section, the one everyone remembers, wasn't improvised. It was carefully built. Joe Walsh and Don Felder worked on it together, shaping two separate parts that had to fit perfectly. And once they did, it became one of the most recognizable endings in rock. By the time the song hit radio, it didn't need explanation. It had atmosphere, it had mystery, and it stayed with people. Which is why stations kept playing it, and never really stopped. 2. Bohemian Rhapsody, Queen. Some songs follow the rules of radio. This one ignored them. Bohemian Rhapsody by Queen was released in 1975, and almost immediately it ran into a problem. It was too long, nearly 6 minutes at a time when radio preferred songs half that length. The label wasn't convinced it would work, but Freddie Mercury had a different idea. He gave a copy to DJ Kenny Everett.
Just killed a man.
He played it over and over again, and something unusual happened. Listeners started calling the station, asking what that song was. Not because they understood it, but because they couldn't ignore it. The track that was too long for radio became the one people actively searched for. And then there's the middle section, that operatic explosion of voices.
Easy come, easy go.
It sounds like a choir. It isn't. It's just 3 people, Freddie Mercury, Brian May, and Roger Taylor, recording their parts again and again, layering harmonies until the sound became something larger than the band itself. They pushed the recording process to its limits, and still, it worked. But maybe the most important detail is this. Freddie Mercury never explained the lyrics, not once. He avoided every question about what the song meant, so people started creating their own answers. Some hear a confession, some hear a metaphor, some hear a story with no clear ending. And that uncertainty is exactly what kept the song alive, because radio didn't just play it, people kept coming back to it, trying to understand it, and never quite finishing that thought. 1. Stairway to Heaven, Led Zeppelin.
And she's buying the stairway to hell.
Some songs become popular. This one became something else. Stairway to Heaven by Led Zeppelin was released in 1971, and from the beginning, it didn't follow any rules. It was long. It changed constantly. It didn't even sound like one single idea. It started quietly, almost like a folk song, and then, slowly, it grew. Not suddenly, not dramatically, just enough that, by the end, you were somewhere completely different from where you started. And most people didn't even notice it happening. That's part of what made it so powerful. The foundation of the song came from Jimmy Page, who began putting it together while staying in a remote cottage in Wales. No studio, no equipment, just an acoustic guitar and time. It wasn't built for radio. In fact, it wasn't even released as a single. You couldn't walk into a store and buy just this song. If you wanted it, you had to buy the entire album, Led Zeppelin 4. And still, radio kept playing it again and again. Because once it started, people didn't turn it off. They stayed with it, waiting for where it was going. And then there's the solo. One take was chosen, not carefully assembled note by note, just played and kept. And somehow it felt right. That's the paradox at the center of this song. It wasn't designed to be a hit. It didn't follow the format. And yet, it became one of the most played songs in the history of FM radio. Because sometimes the music doesn't adapt to the system adapts to the music.